Welcome to Irregular Mind. I am your host, coming to you straight from New Jersey with a thick Indian accent and a deep curiosity. This series I call US History Understanding This Country. It's where we dive headfirst into fascinating story of America, from the prehistoric footsteps of the first inhabitants to the bustling modern nation that draws immigrants, tourists, and dreamers from all over the world. So, why I am doing this? Well, like many immigrants, I came to the United States chasing opportunities. But I quickly realized that this land is more than just skyscrapers and Hollywood. The history of this place is layered, complicated, and honestly sometimes stranger than fiction. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to share what I discovered. Whether you are a middle schooler trying to ace your history class or just someone curious about how this land of cheeseburgers and bald eagles came to be, this podcast is for you. Each episode will be a casual, fun journey into the past. I intend no boring lectures here, just stories, insights, and maybe a couple of puns. Today we are starting right at the beginning, the prehistoric times. What was this land like before it was America? Who were the first people to call it home and how did they get here? Strap in because it's going to be a wild ride through the history. Let's uncover the roots of USA together. Okay, we are going into a time travel, but instead of a fancy sci fi machine, we will use the most powerful time machine ever invented knowledge and imagination. We are diving deep into the prehistory of what would become the United States, exploring a world that existed long before the first European ship touched its shores. Now, for our listeners in India, imagine this. Just like how the Indus Valley civilization tells a story of ancient human settlements, the prehistory of North America is a treasure trove of human resilience, diversity, and incredible adaptation. We are not just talking about dates and facts. We are talking about living, breathing history that shaped an entire continent. Before we meet the first humans, let's talk about the land itself. North America is like a geological canvas painted over millions of years. Picture a massive continent that looks nothing like the map you see today. During the last ice age, between 30,000 and 10,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered much of the North America. Imagine the entire northern part of the continent under ice hundreds of meters thick. This wasn't just any ice. These were glaciers so enormous that they could flatten entire mountain ranges, carve out massive lakes, and fundamentally reshape the landscape. The Great Lakes? They are basically massive scars left behind by the ancient ice sheets. To put it in perspective, these glaciers were like nature's bulldozers, moving at a snail's pace but changing everything in their path. Let's talk about the first humans, the original explorers and settlers of this massive continent. Archaeological evidence suggests that the first humans arrived between 15,000 and 13,000 years ago. But here is where it gets fascinating. They didn't just stroll in, they were survivors, migrants, and incredible adventurers. The Bering Land Bridge, or Beringia, was their highway. Imagine a massive land connection between present day Russia and Alaska, exposed because of sea levels were much lower during the Ice Age. This wasn't a narrow strip, it was a region nearly 1,000 miles wide, a veritable continent bridge where people could live, hunt, and migrate. These weren't random wanderers, they were highly sophisticated hunter gatherer groups with advanced survival skills. They tracked massive Ice Age mammals like woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed tigers, and mastodons and whatnot. Think of them as original wildlife experts understanding animal behaviors, migration patterns, and survival techniques that would make modern survivalists look like amateurs. They hunted the huge animals so that just killing one could feed an entire nomadic group for months. The land bridge theory is one of many. Scientists are still debating on this, but this is one of the theories that answers most of the questions. That's why it is so prolific. The theory says that people kept crossing until around 10,000 BCE when the Ice Age finally started retreating. The oceans rose and covered the Bering Land Bridge, cutting off further migration from the west, from Africa via today's Mongolia and Russia. Later, these Ice Age animals died off or hunted to extinction. These animals were replaced by smaller animals that could thrive in warmer weather, changing people's diet and lifestyle. While some nomadic societies stayed in Alaska, others continued their migration further south and east. They spread across Central and South America and rest of North America. As societies spread, they grew their own cultures and traditions, even different physical traits. Slowly, they developed agriculture. As agriculture became common, societies stopped being nomadic and started settling down in a place. They moved their focus from hunting and gathering to planting seeds and farming foods like squash, maize, and potato. They adapted to these changes very well and became so self sufficient that they produced food for all. Eventually, they built permanent homes, formed villages, and developed advanced technologies like irrigation systems and canals that helped making their lives more easier and productive. Eventually, these societies became civilizations. This was a land of ancient civilizations, full of creativity, power struggles, and achievements that will leave us in awe. Let's dive into four of the most fascinating ones: the Olmecs, the Maya, the Aztecs, and the Incas. First up, the Olmecs, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. These people lived around 1500 BCE in what's now Mexico. Picture this: massive stone heads, each one about 10 feet tall, carved from single block of basalt. These heads likely represent the rulers or gods, and you have probably seen them in movies, documentaries, and even in video games like The Civilization. The Olmecs were trailblazers. They invented Mesoamerica's first writing system, a calendar, and even a famous ball game you have seen in movies where players try to hit a rubber ball through a stone hoop without using their hands. Their cities like San Lorenzo and La Venta were hubs of culture and innovation. But by 400 BCE, the Olmecs mysteriously declined, possibly because of the environmental changes or political conflicts. Still, their influence echoed through the centuries, shaping the cultures that followed. Now, let's fast forward to Maya, the ultimate stargazers of ancient Mesoamerica. The Maya weren't just single kingdom. They were a network of city-states scattered across Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. These folks had an obsession with the skies. They built observatories to track stars and planets, and their 365-day calendar was so accurate it could rival the ones we use today. Ever heard of Chichen Itza? That's where you will find El Castillo, their iconic stepped pyramid. The Mayans were also mathematicians who adopted very early the concept of zero long before Europe would catch up on. And their writing system, full of intricate glyphs, was one of the most advanced in the ancient world. But the Mayans weren't all about peace and learning. Their city states like Tikal and Palenque were constantly at war with each other. By around 900 CE, many of their great cities were abandoned, possibly because of droughts, overpopulation, or just too much internal fighting. Still, Maya culture didn't vanish entirely. Descendants of Maya live on today, preserving parts of their language and traditions. Mayans were portrayed in the movie Apocalypto, which was directed by Mel Gibson. Next, we have Aztecs, the rulers of central Mexico when Spanish arrived in 1500s. The Aztecs were warriors, traders, and builders who founded their capital, Tenochtitlan, on a swampy island in the middle of a lake. Like Venice, but with more pyramids and jaguar warriors. Their empire was built on tribute and conquest. Other cities had to pay them in goods, gold, or even people for human sacrifice. Yep, the Aztecs didn't hold back when it came to rituals. They believed these offerings kept the universe running. But they were also brilliant engineers. They created chinambas, or floating gardens, to farm on the lake. and connected their island city to the mainland with huge causeways. Unfortunately, their story took a tragic turn. In 1519, Hernan Cortes and his Spanish conquistadors arrived bringing guns, horses, and diseases like smallpox. Within 2 years, the mighty Aztec Empire fell, and Tenochtitlan was reduced to rubble. Today, its ruins lie beneath Mexico City, but their culture lives on in art, festivals, and, yeah, you guessed it, video games. Finally, we head south to the Andes Mountains, the home of Inca Empire. The Inca ruled the largest empire in Americas, stretching from modern-day Colombia to Chile. They didn't have a writing or wheels, but they built roads and cities that defied logic. Machu Picchu. Anyone heard of that? Yep. The Inca were masters of organization. They created a system called Quipu using knotted strings to record everything from taxes to census data. Their roads connected their vast empire, with relay runners delivering messages faster than FedEx. Pun intended. But what really set them apart was their architecture. Machu Picchu is still standing thanks to the precision stone cuttings and other techniques they used. Like Aztecs, Inca fell to the Spanish conquistadors. Francisco Pizarro arrived in 1530s taking advantage of a civil war between Inca factions. By 1572, their empire was gone, but their influence is woven into Andes culture, cuisine, and even patterns of Peruvian textiles. So, there you have it, four ancient civilizations, each unique but connected through their incredible contributions to humanity. The Olmecs, Maya, Aztecs, and Inca. They laid the foundation for what would become the Americas, a land of innovation, resilience, and sometimes heartbreak. Yep, we took a slight detour and went down south to the South America. Yeah, now let us come back to North America and talk about what became the US. See, North America wasn't a uniform landscape. From Arctic tundra to tropical forests, from desert landscapes to dense woodlands, indigenous people adapted to incredibly diverse environments. The Inuit in the far north developed technologies to survive in temperatures that would freeze a person in minutes. The Pueblo people in the southwestern deserts created architectural marvels that kept them cool in scorching heat. Each region in the US had its unique culture, language, and survival strategy. Linguists estimate that before European contact, there were over 300 distinct languages spoken in North America, a linguistic diversity that rivals the most multilingual regions of the world, like the one from where I come from, India, because we have more than 1,500 languages spoken and more dialects than that. Coming back to the indigenous people of North America, let's start with Pueblo people, a group that thrived in what's now the southwestern United States. They are best known for their unique adobe homes, structures made from sun-dried mud bricks. Imagine an apartment complex made entirely of earth. Some of these, like the ones at Mesa Verde in Colorado, are tucked into cliff sides, blending seamlessly with the environment. Puebloans built kivas, or underground ceremonial chambers used for spiritual rituals. These spaces were the heart of their communities and were designed to connect the people with their ancestors and the cosmos. Though they faced challenges like droughts, the Pueblo people adapted and their descendants, the Hopi, Zuni, and others, still carry on these traditions today. Meanwhile, in the arid deserts of what's now Arizona, the Hohokam were busy engineering the complex system of canals to irrigate their crops. These canals stretched hundreds of miles, a remarkable feat of innovation in such a harsh climate. The Hohokam left behind intricate pottery and evidence of vibrant trade networks before their society declined around 1400 CE. Moving eastward, we encounter the mound builder societies. These cultures, including the Adena, Hopewell, and the later Mississippian people, transformed the landscape of Midwest and Southeast with monumental earthworks. The Adena and Hopewell thriving around 1000 BCE to 500 CE, built ceremonial mounds in Ohio and beyond. Some were shaped like animals, such as the famous Serpent Mound, which stretches over 1300 feet. These societies were known for their elaborate trade networks, exchanging goods like shells, copper, and obsidian across vast distances. But the real superstar of mound building were the Mississippians, who reached their peak between 800 and 1600 CE. Their largest settlement, Cahokia near modern day St. Louis, was home to tens of thousands of people. At its center stood Monk's Mound, a massive earthwork as tall as a 10-story building. The Mississippians developed complex social hierarchies, practiced agriculture, and left behind intricate art before their culture faded, possibly due to climate shifts or conflicts. Now, let us zoom out and look at how geography shaped these cultures. The Americas aren't a one size fits all landscape. Each region offered unique challenges and opportunities, and ancient people adapted brilliantly to them. The North and Northwest. Up in the frozen tundra and the rugged coastlines, indigenous people like Inuit thrived with ingenuity. They built igloos for shelter and hunted seals and whales using kayaks. In the northwest, groups like the Tlingit, I don't know whether I am pronouncing it right, the spelling is Tlingit, Tlingit, and Haida are famous for their totem poles, the towering works of art that tell stories of family lineage and spiritual beliefs. These societies relied on abundant resources of sea, building wealthy, stratified communities without agriculture. Moving to the Pacific coast, indigenous people like Chumash and Pomo lived in rich environments where food was plentiful. They crafted canoes from redwood trees, gathered acorns, and built small but interconnected communities. Their culture revolved around a deep respect for nature. In the southwest, we already talked about the Pueblo and Hohokam, but the southwest also included groups like the Apache and Navajo. These societies had to adapt to an arid environment, relying on trade, nomadic lifestyles, and innovative farming techniques like dry farming to survive. Okay, remember this name Navajo because that will become a chapter on itself. They are very interesting people. In the heart of the continent, the Great Plains were home to nomadic people like the Lakota and Cheyenne. They followed massive herds of buffaloes, which provided everything from food and clothing to tools and shelter. It was a challenging life, but the Plains people mastered it, crafting portable tipis and celebrating a rich oral tradition. The fertile southeast was home to Mississippian cultures as well as later groups like Cherokee and Seminole. Agriculture thrived here, with corn, beans, squash forming the three sisters of their diet. This region also had extensive trade networks and hierarchical societies led by powerful chiefs. Finally, we come to the Northeast, a land of forests and rivers. Here, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois League, emerged as a beacon of political innovation. This alliance of six nations, including the Mohawk and Seneca, established a democratic system of governance that inspired the founders of the United States. The Haudenosaunee lived in long houses, communal homes that could house entire extended families. Their philosophy of unity and balance with the nature still resonates, offering lessons for the modern society. So, there you have it, a continent full of diverse cultures, each shaped by its environment and leaving a legacy that endures its stories, artifacts, and landscapes of the Americas. Now that we have gone through the incredible civilizations and geography of America, it's time to shift gears. Let's talk about the daring explorers who came knocking from across the Atlantic. The Vikings, the age of exploration and the wave of expeditions that changed the history forever. Before Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, the Vikings were already here, roughly 500 years earlier. Around the year 1000 CE, the Norse explorer Leif Erikson landed on the shores of what's now Newfoundland in Canada, in a place they call Vinland. The Vikings were seafarers from Scandinavia, and their longships were spacecrafts of their time, fast, durable, and capable of crossing vast oceans. But unlike later European explorers, the Vikings didn't stick around. They clashed with indigenous people whom they called Skrælings and abandoned their settlements after a few years. Still, their short-lived adventure marked the first European presence in the North America, a forgotten chapter until archaeological discoveries at L'Anse aux Meadows in 20th century confirmed the legend. Fast forwarding to 1400s, the Europe was itching to expand. Why? Three words: God, gold, and glory. The Crusades had already introduced Europeans to goods like spices and silk from the east, but getting there by land was expensive and dangerous. They had to cross vast, cold, and hot deserts and face a lot of tribes in between, not to forget the powerful empires of Turkey and Persia in between. Enter the age of exploration, a period when new tools and ideas fueled a global scramble to find sea routes to Asia. Key inventions like the astrolabe, a device used to measure the latitude by observing the stars, and the magnetic compass revolutionized navigation. Ships like Caravel, with its triangular sails, made long ocean voyages possible. Add to this the Renaissance, a time of curiosity and innovation, and Europe was ready to venture beyond its borders. Let us have a snapshot of what it looked like between 1400s and 1500s. Between 1400 and 1500, explorers from Spain, Portugal, England, and France set sail in all directions. Here's the quick rundown of most famous. 1487, Bartholomew Diaz, the first European to round the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. In 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered the America while trying to find a westward route to Asia. 1496, Vasco da Gama. He reached India by sea, establishing a lucrative spice trade for Portugal. 1497, John Cabot explored the coasts of Newfoundland for England. Pedro Alvarez Cabral accidentally discovered Brazil while sailing to India. 1502, Amerigo Vespucci explored South America, lending his name to the continent. 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon landed in Florida, searching for the fabled Mountain of Youth. In 1513 itself, Vasco Nunez de Balboa, the first European to see the Pacific Ocean from the Americas. 1519, Ferdinand Magellan began the first circumnavigation of the globe. Though he didn't survive the journey, that's a story for another time. 1519, Hernan Cortes conquered the Aztec Empire in Mexico. 1522, Francisco Pizarro. He defeated the Inca Empire in Peru. In 1524, Giovanni da Verrazzano mapped the Atlantic coast of North America for France. In 1528, Alvar Nuñez Cabeza de Vaca explored the Gulf Coast and Southwest, living among indigenous people. In 1535, Jacques Cartier claimed parts of Canada for France, exploring St. Lawrence River. In 1539, Hernando de Soto traveled through the southeast, becoming the first European to cross Mississippi River. 1540, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado searched the mythical seven cities of gold in southwest. As you can see, the four superpowers of ocean started fighting each other for trade routes, uh, that is, England, Spain, Portugal, and France. So this has started causing trouble in within the Europe, and Pop had to come in between to mediate. With so many explorers planting flags, Spain and Portugal decided to avoid conflict by dividing the world between them. With the mediation of the Pope, they signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. It was in 1494, And this treaty gave the Portugal the control over the lands east of the Pacific line, which includes Brazil and a part of Africa, and the Spain everything west to it. It was really a bold move, as if the rest of the world didn't exist at all. And now you know why Brazil is speaking Portuguese and Mexico is speaking Spanish. It is because of this treaty, the Treaty of Tordesillas. Spain's explorers weren't just looking for trade routes, they were conquistadors or conquerors. These men, like Cortes and Pizarro, came armed with steel weapons, horses, and diseases like smallpox. They toppled empires, looted gold and silver, and established colonies that reshaped the Americas forever. But let's not forget the human cost. The conquest devastated the indigenous people through war, enslavement, and disease. It's a brutal chapter in history that's as much about resilience as it is about the loss. With this, I am concluding this episode. In the next episode, we'll start Christopher Columbus and the discovery of Americas. Until then, bye.